Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today's Thursday, September 19th, about 10:30 as we're rolling this morning. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm fine. It's a busy day. It's a good day. You know, we're starting to get some cool weather here finally.
I'm so ready for it, man. I'm so ready. I'm one of those people who I've been wearing hoodies and jackets and stuff. I'm trying to will it.
Egg it on.
Come on, just come. We're ready for it.
Double dog dare you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm excited about that. And there's just plenty going on around here in our world.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm barely keeping up with what I need to do and what I want to attend to, and having some fun and ultimately just getting some rest. We've been in the middle of a sermon series on trying to cease, like not resting because we're tired, but resting because we should stop.
Yeah.
And so it's been fun trying to implement some new habits for Sabbath and things like that. So it's been good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good and very hard to do in our world today. Okay, well, fall is also football time. You and I are both football fans.
Yeah, man. How's your fantasy football team doing right now?
I'm in 2 leagues and I'm 1-1 in both of them.
Wow.
But I drafted McCaffrey with the number 1 pick. I did not expect for him to be out.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Like 8 weeks or whatever it's going to end up being.
That's a bummer. I saw somebody's screenshot. I don't know if I can find it for the audience, but we're like half of his starting lineup, or like 3/4 of starting lineups out.
Yeah,
with injuries.
There's been a lot of injuries.
Yeah, I'm doing so bad, Matt. So we have like an old college buddies one. And I'm doing so bad. I think there was a glitch in the ESPN app or something. But after the first week, I was 0-2. It was like so bad. I got 2. They're like, wow. You get 2 losses for that.
Yeah. We're predicting. We know where you're headed.
I'm like, okay, this is subtle.
Nice. Thanks, ESPN. So we're going to talk about football today.
Okay.
But if we have some non-sports people watching or listening, we're using football to talk about something different, as we normally do. So if you're not a sports fan, I think you'll still be able to take something away from this.
Yes, definitely.
One of the biggest headlines in the NFL right now is Tua, the quarterback for the Dolphins. Help me out. Say his last name.
Tagovailoa.
There you go.
Say it fast. There's a lot of letters in there, but it's kind of, I don't know. So
I feel bad for the guy. So last Thursday night in the game against the Bills, he went out kind of mid, was it third quarter?
Yeah, making a run to the end zone. Hard hit from Damar Hamlin.
Yes.
Like the irony of it all, right? The guy who had the towering injury news from 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, went to cardiac arrest. It was a big deal. Tua unfortunately got a concussion. He was out for the rest of the game, and it's just hard. It's hard for him specifically because I think this is right. This is his 4th documented concussion. People think he probably had another one that went undocumented or wasn't registered by the medical staff or whatever. So this guy's got 4, maybe 5 concussions, 3 in the past 2 years. Yeah. And everyone's saying, like, man, is it time for him to retire?
Right.
Which he's still very young. He's only been in the league for a few years. He's very good, and he's on a very good team. The Dolphins are one of the most fun teams to watch right now. They've got so much talent, and they're fast, and they're quick, and lots of high-flying players, and it's just a fun team to watch. So Tua, he's out. He's on injured reserve, so he's out at least 4 weeks, I guess that would mean. They haven't said that he's not going to come back. People are kind of encouraging him to retire.
Right.
I think Des Bryant and a couple other kind of high-profile people said, look, man, for the good of yourself and your family, it's time to hang up the cleats, man. You need to call it just so you don't just ruin your life by playing this game. So I feel bad for the guy. And concussions are common in the NFL, but I don't know anybody else who's had 4. He just seems, I don't know if he's kind of more susceptible. He just had really bad luck or whatever. Yeah. So this poor guy, young guy, kind of top of the world. Again, one of the most exciting teams, a very good team. He's very talented. He was a star college player. At least potentially his career might be over way shorter than it should be. So I just imagine, you could see it on his face when he walked off the field. Like, I think he knew that he maybe was done at least for this year, or at least for several weeks. It's just heartbreaking to see someone lose their dream. Like on live national TV, he knew that his dream was slipping away. So again, putting it in our context, most of us probably aren't in a situation where we're publicly going to lose our dream in front of the world, right? Yeah. But all of us know what it's like to be disappointed, especially if we have something really important to us and it doesn't turn out. I just thought we could talk about that for a little bit, like the death of a dream, or if something you really care about slips away. How can we deal with the pain that comes to that, looking ahead? So what are some first things that popped to your mind with using Tua as our example today?
So this might be a pick your own adventure discussion from here for you. So you just kind of sit where you want. But because I see 2 layers. Like layer number 1 is, yes, this guy, like I think the wisdom tradition of Scripture talks about looking at like the long view of life, making the most of it. There is kind of a common groove in the ground, and so there's this pursuit of the good life and enduring to the end. What was top of mind for the ancient audience in the Hebrew Scriptures, the Hebrew Bible, was not having their life cut short. They didn't really have a lot of anxiety about the far beyond. I think that it was murky. They had some ideas, but no one could corroborate those ideas, right? And so they were obsessed with, how do I have my life not be cut short? And that seemed to be their anxiety. It comes up again and again in the Psalms in particular. And so I think that's one layer is there is a groove in the ground. Yeah. We expect, not because we're prideful, just because we see it more common. There is like, we've got maybe 70, 80 years on the clock. We know that we're going to have like youth for X amount of years, occupation for X amount of years, family if we can, if we would like to, and then, downshifting at some point and then handing things off at the end, right? So I think a pro athlete, they've got kind of an interesting loop in there where a lot of their high-earning vocational years where they're counted on and needed and where they can earn is very short. I remember Troy Aikman just saying how weird it was to retire at 35. Like the thing that you wanted to do, you were done at 35. And oftentimes it's not on your own terms. But it could be like Tua, where it's like, no, something like people are steering you, or a situation is steering you, and you're not being able to pick it on your own. So I think that's one layer. The other layer is, and I think this has got to be in the factors for him, is people are counting on him. I mean, I think there were players brought on to Miami, coaches brought on to Miami, even like stadiums, like maybe like even plant build or whatever, like knowing that he's going to quarterback their team for the future.
He just had a giant contract. I think he's the highest paid athlete in Miami's history.
Yeah. So like all this expectation. And so how are you, if you're at least just a bit self-aware, thinking, I probably need to go as long as I can because people are counting on me. I don't want to let them down. Right. And so I think that there's two layers. There's the just personal, this, I think, grief that he might be experiencing of how come I can't finish the track and the trail that I feel like I was on, all the way to its end. I think the second layer is, how do you deal with letting people down when they're counting on you, particularly in a very significant piece of the puzzle, like a quarterback of an NFL franchise, and then like fans and fantasy football. I mean, obviously we're like peanuts compared to other factors involved, but like you have that pressure of feeling counted on. That's, probably gnawing deep within the surface. So I see two trails here, Matt. You pick the adventure from here. What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the personal stuff, or you want to talk about people counting on you and the pressure? I think stuff.
Both are equally valued. So I don't mean to push it back on you, but do either of those have a Bible thing that we can eat more easily than the other pull something out of? Like, what's a lesson? Which one gives a more practical lesson for us?
Sure.
Would you say?
So I think what I like about the Bible is it's pretty honest about the biographies within it. Most of them kind of end not with a happily ever after. A lot of times these tales will end before we know how it ends, because I think it provokes a discussion. I think of like Jonah's structure in particular. I mean, the book of Jonah, it's so hilarious because it's got all these extremes, right? Like the prophet of Israel is the most unfaithful one, and the outsider Gentiles are more faithful and they're eager to worship and follow God, and the prophet's not. But it ends in that stirring conversation between God and Jonah, and it ends with God giving like a statement or like a question for Jonah to wrestle with, and then the curtain falls. And I think it's meant for the community now to wrestle with that question after the story is over. I think if you look at somebody who had a trajectory going and it changed pretty abruptly, this is a character we talk a lot about on Trending, if I can just recall. But I look at Barnabas or Joseph from the book of Acts. This guy comes from out of obscurity. I mean, this is during an era of the early church where people are, if they got extra income and resources, they're giving it to the apostles to help sustain the poor among them. So he sells this field. We know that he's a Levite, so it's kind of strange. Like he's got an odd story because Levites, historically didn't have land.
Yeah.
So he must have maybe he was a good poker player and he just, had a good night. And so
yeah.
got this land.
His fantasy team was really good.
That's right. Yeah. He didn't start 0-2 after week 1.
Yeah.
So, but it's almost like he put his life back in sync. Maybe that's like a narrative theology there.
Mm-hmm.
Like my life didn't seem to make sense. And so he did this drastic move. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
He's not a landowner. He seems to be an emerging leader. When Saul of Tarsus is trying to join the church, but people are afraid of him.
Yeah.
Barnabas is the one to step forward and to embrace him and to give him a spot in the community. Then you get panned to Antioch and in Acts 13, and Barnabas and Saul go on a missionary journey, and his name is mentioned first, where Saul's maybe his understudy.
Yeah.
And then along that journey, it switches to where Barnabas hands it over. And they have a very successful first missionary journey.
Yeah.
And they show up to the council in Jerusalem in Acts 15, and they're like the deciding voices. Like they make a great appeal to the leadership to include Gentiles, lower the bar, don't make it difficult for them who are coming to God, right? Mm-hmm. And so we think, okay, his life is going up.
Yeah.
But then the very next story, he and Paul have a disagreement about Mark,
mm-hmm.
and then they part ways.
Yeah.
And Barnabas goes basically into oblivion
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in the story. Now, Acts is shaped to highlight Peter and to highlight Paul.
Yeah.
So obviously it's written that way. But I always wonder, just as a casual Bible reader and someone who daydreams, what happened to him?
Mm-hmm.
Was he just well, that was cool. I guess maybe that land is still available.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get it back and I don't know, open up a scooter business. I have no idea. So, but I just look at him and he must have wondered phase after phase in his journey what was going to be next, because
mm-hmm.
where he started and where he ended took this long, interesting twist and turn.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wonder how he dealt with the drastic changes in his story.
Yeah.
And we don't know.
Right.
But I do kind of see us, if we could follow his path,
mm-hmm.
but also in the typical Bible pattern, we're left wondering and discussing
mm-hmm.
what would have come of him if the cameras would have continued to follow him to the very end. So
you've done a good job kind of distilling the Barnabas story as in these conversations, because I didn't really put a lot of those things together in one little narrative until we have talked about him before. Yeah. He's one of those guys I wish we knew more about. I do wish we knew where he ended up after that. And he's a character I wish the Bible would have explored a little bit more. But I do like that, whether it's Barnabas or Jonah, the Bible's full of characters who life didn't go according to plan. There's a lot. Basically all of them. Yes. They had things in their path that were not what they were anticipating, and we follow their journey to see how they deal with it. So that's kind of a common theme. If I could toss one more question at you. So I was just at some meetings this week where it came up about just the idea of profession versus calling versus job versus hobby. Just even how we label some of those things are maybe not always consistent. And so Tua might be losing his profession or his career, but mm-hmm. he might have a calling that's separate from those two things. Yeah. How would you define calling, profession, career? Yeah. And how, if someone's in a spot where they have to change one of those, can we kind of hold on to one to keep us going? Does that make sense? Can you flesh that out
I think there's a couple things. One of the things I've loved about our Sabbath series is mm-hmm. we're asking a provocative question of who are we when we're not performing? Because I think we tend to talk about our job or some mm-hmm. of our side hobbies. Yeah. But those ultimately boil down to performing, and am I underperforming or outperforming, or where I want to be? But there's more to us than that. And I just go back to the David Brooks-ism of resume versus eulogy, and I just think it would be an important thing right now for Tua to have a trusted advisor or a coach or a therapist or family surround mm-hmm. him and say, there's more to Tua than football. It's probably hard to see mm-hmm. because football's been the very center of who you've been. Yeah. But we've noticed these things about you, mm-hmm. and there's opportunity for you to develop maybe another side of you. So I think of Randy Johnson, the pitcher, who played for about everybody, right? He played for the D-backs. He also played for the Yankees. Yeah. And he hit that bird. He's kind of known as a guy with a wicked fastball, but he hit this bird. And I think you brought up his story, how he is now a sports photographer on the sidelines. Yeah. And how he's just kind of lived into that very awkward moment of mm-hmm. his story. He's not reminding people of his wins and losses, his ERA, strikeouts, all that stuff, World Series appearances.
Yeah.
But this one weird story about him, and he's just comfortable with that being something he's probably more well known for, and probably will be for the rest of his life. And so I think there it comes at a risk. Like, can you trust either the benevolence of the universe if you're not religious, or could you, as we would, trust God and opening up opportunities apart from what you've been known for so far, to develop a bit more of who you are. I think it goes back to like worthiness. And so there's a great book that I've been kind of making my way through bit by bit. There's difference between like having confidence and worthiness. And I think that someone needs to coach Tua in a sense of self-worth, so that he might be able to figure out something that he could be as equally excited about than maybe playing the game of football, so that he can have his tank filled for the next season, ultimately the remainder of his life, because he's got a sense of worth, not just a sense of usefulness or even confidence in a job. I think we see this when we get other tasks, and I think maybe he's going to be able to bump into something that it might surprise him, but something that's kind of been laying in wait in the wings. That now he's got time to focus on it. Maybe he can begin to develop it, and develop another side of who he is. I think that's his opportunity there. I actually just had coffee with a friend who they had Tim Tebow in town for a nonprofit fundraiser, and he marveled at Tim Tebow's humility in all things, and his ability to inspire people. Obviously, he was a pretty good football player. Ultimately, didn't translate much beyond a couple of key moments for the Denver Broncos where he broke the internet, right, T.O. time. But more than anything else, that young man knows how to inspire people. He knows how to highlight an opportunity for people to go after together. We saw that at Florida, particularly when he was the quarterback there and he motivated his team. I mean, he gave a speech after like a game where they lost, a press conference. That speech is on a plaque on the University of Florida's campus. They didn't have to pick it, but they did, right? And so I think that's where he had more worth than just his performance on a football field. He's got this charisma, off the charts charisma to motivate people, and he can use that for just about anything out there now. And so I hope that Tua would have the afforded opportunity to try to figure out what that is, so he can think about his next phase of life.
That's good. Last question, we'll try to get out here on this, but I think a weird kind of a side parallel story. So you and I were in France this summer, and it came up a few times that in the French culture, compared to American culture, you're really not known by what you do. Like, they don't really talk about their careers. And in fact, it's almost like rude. If you meet someone new, say, hey, like, what do you do? That's almost offensive to them because they don't really value career as much as we do here in America. So I've just been thinking about that, I think, since we've been back. I think we kind of make this problem when we elevate career and celebrity and we put people on pedestals. And so is there something that, again, just for the average person watching, how can we help curb that? Like, do we just need to do a better job at getting to know people as a person, regardless of what they do?
Sure.
Or is there anything what can we do so that Tua is not in such a pickle where he feels like he has to keep playing football? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think something that the Vanderbloemen search group did when they developed their values of their workplace, they had like this a big sticky note that, the big sticky note pads. And it wasn't every week. And sometimes their manager would surprise them when they would do it. But they would say, what do we do on our best days in this office? When you go home going, it was a good day at the office. What do we do? And they wrote it and they kind of put it away. And then a couple months later, they bring it back out. Do you want to add anything to this list? And that's how they tried to figure out, like, on my best day where I was really firing on all cylinders, what happened? Or what were we doing? And I thought about we did the Olympics for our staff Olympics, and you guys did a great post of just some snapshots from that day. But I think our workplace is best when there's like levity, and we can have fun and share as much of us in one room together, having fun. We can still get work done in those environments, but those are like our best days. And so I think we would say on our best days collectively, like, we're playful and work, emerges from that. I think we feel good about our work. And so I guess for an individual, why not have a list? Why not have a journal? And don't do it every Tuesday at 5. allow it to catch you off guard. Like maybe even set like an alarm in your phone, or have your friend say,
just
set a dozen times this year where I have to pick out a journal and really think about my life, and allow it to catch us off guard randomly, and begin to be honest about, I have been at my best when I do these things. And then maybe like Venn diagram that. Is there a way that I could do all these all at once?
Yeah.
And what would that look like? And I think that from there, we might have a heading about what we should be giving more of our best hours to in the day. And I think it'll be intensely gratifying. And I think that we'll be at our best, and people will love to be around us, to have great work.
Yeah.
And that'll be the stuff that people talk about when we're long gone. That'll be like the legacy that we leave behind too.
Yeah.
We won't have to defend it because it'll be the most apparent thing about us.
Yeah.
And I think that would be kind of a praiseworthy endeavor.
Yeah. I think it's just tricky whenever there's celebrities involved, right? Because I think for most celebrities, like for Tua or anybody else, whenever they pass away, when they're doing their eulogy, people who are close to them probably will talk about their character and their personality and whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't get to see that, so we're going to remember these people by their accomplishments, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just a messy part of celebrity is we often don't get to see the good stuff, the good, really quality human stuff. We just see the highlights and the
We tend to see the extreme stuff when they've extremely messed up, when they've extremely excelled. Right. Because that's what you have to do to be a celebrity. You have to push through the crowd. That old adage about celebrity, they spend their whole life wanting to be noticed, then wear sunglasses after it, you know, because they don't want to be noticed. And so I think it's just kind of, I think that'd be a tricky life to live.
Yeah.
You're right. So, yeah. And so maybe that's what it is. Like, let me make some decisions where it's just a few people close to me at stake, instead of the people who I don't know, who just troll me on the internet and say nasty things, and they know nothing about me, other than what the cameras catch. Yeah. So, yeah, that could be something for him too. Yeah.
Well, I think... So, full disclosure, Waddle is on my fantasy team. So I want Tua to... It'd be great if he came back for my fantasy team. But we just want him as a person to do what's best for him, right? Like he's in a hard situation where he's got to make a hard decision about the rest of his life. I want what's best for the guy. Yeah. And I think most people watching, even if they are diehard football fans, in moments like this, it's really easy to see the person, right? When someone's on the ground and clearly struggling, we just want them to be okay, right? Yeah. Yes. So that's our desire for Tua, and we hope that things prevail for him.
And only just a little bit of his story, like he comes from a culture that's very heavily connected to your family. Yeah. So he's surrounded, and that's comforting to know that people will be able to support him whatever he decides to do next. And so that's a comforting thing. So
definitely. So we're cheering you on to it, whatever you decide to do.
Yeah, friend of the pod.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. So thanks again so much for all of you watching and listening. Hope to see you Sunday, or we'll be back next week.
Yep. See you next time.
All right. Have a good weekend. Yep.